Welcome back to another episode of Exile's podcast. Brooks and this is Cory. We're the Raley brothers. And today we're going to cover the 27 Tombstone and a couple of our rifle models and kind of dive into the weeds a little bit, but maybe stay out of all the technical stuff. I'll let Cory start off with the Tombstone. Let's cover name, brands, and just kind of some of the R&D we've done.
Yeah, we're just obviously a successful cartridge needs a couple of things, right? It's got to be a little catchy, cutting edge on components, and shooting modern stuff and all that. Like obviously you need a effective cartridge. But one thing we really thought was, what's a catchy name? You know, what can we come up with that someone says it and just like that is on the nose? You know, we had a bunch of different concepts and ideas, and I don't know if you were watching the movie or me or something, and then you're just like, oh, I'm watching Tombstone. You're like, ding, ding, ding. You know?
Let's run with that, right? And then it's like all the branding effort, all the brand identity, a little bit of Western, a little bit of outlaw. It was like, this is on the nose.
Yeah.
Now we got to deliver on a cartridge, right? So we got a name. Is it 25? Is it 27? Don't want to give away all the meat and the potatoes of the whole conversation, but as we got the name, and we start to try to develop a case, right? Like we go to what was that CAD system that we had on our computer? Quick load.
Quick load. Yeah.
And tinkering, playing with projections, shoulder angles, powder loads, compression or compressed loads, pressures, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so just
really playing with the formula, right? Like what's the massive amount of powder? You know, the cool, like, and I think it's quick design too, where you actually design the cartridge and, you know, you can mess with different shoulder angles and how much powder you're going to get and like the water capacity and all those kinds of things. No, you learn a lot by messing with that stuff. And whenever you go into it, really trying to find or like fill a void in the market, you know, like we started this in 2019 of really starting to develop the Tombstone concept. And like you said, we bounced around the idea of a 25 Tombstone, you know, shooting some of those 115 burgers. And then I think they had like a 130, that Ace blackjack bullet back then. So we dabbled in that and just, you know, maybe that's not the right route, right? Like, is it a little bit more efficient than a 6.5 PRC? Yeah, we get some better bullets with some higher BCs, pick up some velocity here and there. But I don't know if it sets the whole world on fire with like its capability out west and just its just covering a general
larger market.
A larger market, exactly.
100%. Because we want to be a hunting brand, right? So is there anything wrong with 22 Creedmoor? Is there anything wrong with a 25 caliber? No, they can do lots of things. But I think ultimately when we decided we wanted to do the Western, we wanted big game. We wanted Super 10. We wanted the North American 29. We wanted to check all the boxes. If there was a versatile cartridge to do it, that's what we were going to kind of lean into.
Yeah. And I think 6.5 PRC was right around that 2019 era, maybe 2018, somewhere in there. But we were building a lot of those, and we were like, man, a lot of our customers are like, these are awesome, but what if it shot a little bigger bullet? And then, you know, the wheels start turning.
Right, but you also hand loaded for some 7 Psalms. And you built some of those. We like those. You could build those in 22 inches. And we were kind of shorting those up. But it's like, is ammo readily available? What are the hiccups when you try to hand load into bigger bullets? Just kind of dive into that.
Yeah, the limitation of a 7 Psalm is this, like, it's brass, you know, especially back then. You know, there's companies now that pump it out some, but back then it was like dime a dozen, you know, trying to track this stuff down. So whenever you dove off in a 7 Psalm, like you were hand load to the max, you know, sourcing this stuff, thinking way out ahead, trying to source components. And then the other limitation was maybe shooting those, you know, in a short action cartridge, you're limited to, like, your biggest variable in a short action is the length, you know, that you can fit it in the magazine. And those 284 bullets, like, you know, they're really only capable of shooting those 168s and maybe squeezing in a 180 in there. You just run out of length, man. You take up a lot. Like, you seat those bullets to where they fit in the magazine, you take up a lot of case capacity. And that's just limiting in itself. So
right, and then you stretch it into a long, and then you're kind of, why wouldn't I just have a bigger bore caliber with more case capacity, more powder if I'm already in long?
Yeah, exactly. Then you're like, okay, a 7 rim mag's been out for a real long time, and you know we're comparing a short action, like it should be a short action cartridge in a long action. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of confusing. You know, you can get into the medium length stuff, but you know, then you're just down another rabbit hole, another thing you have to figure out, and custom components that aren't readily available. So is there ways to do it? Sure. But we wanted to design this whole cartridge around building it in shorts. And we thought there was a niche right there between the 6.5 PRC in the 7 Psalm, dropping down, shooting the 160 to 170 grain bullets in the 270 caliber, and just like the overall cult following that the 270 Win had, like all the old men that were shooting whitetail and stuff,
130, 140 grain bullets.
Absolutely.
Like, if we can better this, why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then especially the components that these manufacturers were pumping out with the more modern style bullets, and being able to shoot those 160s to 170s in the 270 caliber was big. So we immediately saw that as a huge advantage, and then it was like, okay, let's dive into how short we can make this and still keep it effective out to realistic hunting distances.
Right. And so we got to circle back. This is 6 years ago, right? We're coming up with this cartridge. We want to be, creative, innovative. Mm-hmm. But also at that time, every box of ammo you picked up, the information on the back of the box was based on a 24 to 26 inch barrel. It was all muzzle velocity, got to be over 3,000, got to be these things, right? And BCs were not, I wouldn't say weren't discussed or important, but it wasn't the top of the list.
Yeah.
Velo was more important.
Yeah, you were like the super advanced guy if you understood BCs at that time, right? Like you were cutting edge if you even knew what a ballistic coefficient was,
right. Right. And so we kind of leaned heavily into that side. Like, wait, man, like when we're running these charts out in these, ballistic charts, and we're comparing cartridges, well, man, we're getting a lot of the same performance, maybe not out of the muzzle, but that's 700, 800, 900 yards. We're trying to catch up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of the BC on the bullets making up some of the differences.
Yeah.
And so that was very encouraging, I think, when we were kind of doing our research.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a good example is like a 6.5 PRC, shooting a 143 grain bullet. Those are really good out to 500. And then, with the 27 Tombstone shooting the 170s, like past 500, like those charts just flip. We start out running that because of the efficiencies of the bullet. Right. We may have started at almost 100 to 150 feet per second slower in these shorter rifles, but that's the whole thing, right? Like the BCs are the giant trade-offs, and making that balance between the right weight bullet that fits in a short, I don't know. It's just like it fit together so well once we finally got it all figured out.
Right. And to be cutting edge, let's be honest, there's a bajillion Wildcats. Me and you did all the research. We got posters in our office of every Wildcat that's ever been created, some semi-spec, some not. Mm-hmm. Just at that time, Gunworks had the 7 LRM. Mm-hmm. Lazzarini. Is that the other one?
Yeah.
They had those hot rods, all those different cartridges.
The Firebirds.
Yeah, they had some cool names too.
Yeah.
I think the Creedmoor had come out. PRC was brand new. Mm-hmm. But it's like no one was to short barrels yet.
Yeah.
No one was sprinting there. They were just now starting to touch carbon fiber. Mm-hmm. And we were like, well, why can't we do both?
Yeah.
Why can't on the back of our box we be talking about an 18 to 20 inch?
Yeah.
The velocity is going to be reduced, but like we said, we're catching you in distance. Mm-hmm. I'll show you on a ballistic chart. Mm-hmm. And so our confidence grew, and like, okay, we put this in your hands, and no one knows the difference at 2,800 feet per second, 2,900 feet per second to 3,100 feet per second. You can't tell the difference in recoil.
Exactly.
You don't know the difference.
Yeah.
If it's a few more clicks.
Yeah, that's the big thing too, right? Scopes got so much better. So if it was, 3 more clicks here or there, it's like,
what are we really trading off here?
Yeah, exactly.
One I can be 3, 4, 5 inches short.
Honestly, going back to like the Weatherby cartridges stuff, really going back, the Weatherby cartridges in general became super popular, in my opinion, because back then scopes were less capable. They didn't have turrets on top, and you were doing the old Kentucky windage, right. Just trying to, hey, I gotta get this super fast bullet that is going to delete, ignore all these variables. If I can get there in an instant, I got to deal with less wind. I got to do all these things. I want to put it on his back and drop it in, right? Exactly. That you talk to old guys all the time. They talk about those old cartridges they were shooting.
Right. It was a laser beam.
Yeah, and that's what they were after, and like they were successful doing it. But like now, if they would have had the scopes that we do now, I think it would have been a little bit different. Right. They were working with the components at the time, and that was an effective way of doing it. I just think there's with all the modern components and stuff.
Why is being in a short action so fundamentally important to us?
Yeah, good question. We can build short actions in the lightest possible packages of all of our rifles. We kind of the Tombstone and the high roller kind of like went together. You know, we were searching for all these efficiencies, and we can lighten it up here, we can do this, we can do this. So the short action is extremely important. You save an inch immediately by ditching along. You know, and short action cartridges, obviously, because of their lengths, have less powder. That equates to having the ability to shoot them in shorter barrels, and by shooting in shorter barrels, that's like burning the powder in a specific length. You know, long action magnums need X amount to effectively burn it, or else they're dropping, 60 plus feet a second once you start, hacking these things down too far. So it's just always chasing that efficiency, and that's what short actions gave to us. So everything that we designed in the Tombstone was, how do we get all this performance into a short? Because that's our lightest package, that's our shortest barrels, that's our suppressed rifle. We were thinking about going and hunting different places and taking this lightweight gun that was capable of killing everything in North America. That was the whole goal.
Right. So then we get into shorter barrels, right? We're talking about burning powder. Remember laying all the poster board out and like shooting H1000 and things like that, and seeing the pellets, like, okay, we got to get a faster burning powder, and tinker in there and finding the balance.
Yeah.
Compressed loads, making sure we feed well, all that,
the
blowing out feed lips,
changes,
all this, exactly.
how that affects pressure,
everything that we've learned in the last 6 years. But just kind of give people, those are all the pros. The other pro is, a lot of the good factory ammo now, what makes a cartridge successful is being a factory load. And so we knew, if we're going to send it, let's send it. Right. And so once we did our field testing with 300 WSM, resized, cut down 18 steps later, right? We're like, hey, we got a pretty good proof of concept here. We like the bullet options. We got some on display here. And I'll let you cover those in a minute. But we finally said, you know what? You want to be successful, you got to stick your neck out there. And that's what we've done from the jump. But no, we went and got our own brass made. Right? We imported
head stamps matter so much on these Wildcats, just for a guy like, kids start messing around in their safe and they want to take this rifle out and it's branded, 300 WSM, but it's actually a 27 Tombstone. And, it gets complicated, right? So like whenever you can really dive off the deep end and get, head stamp brass, that's a big deal in the ammo side, and just kind of makes you a real cartridge once you've kind of taken that leap of faith in your own concept.
And so, and I think it also is validating and comforting to a consumer, right? You're going to buy a Wildcat, and if it's resized brass, you're like, oh, how are these guys going to keep their doors open? Is this going to exist in a year, or do I have something? It is a big investment to buy a custom rifle. It's even more of a risk to buy a Wildcat. And so for us to overcome the Wildcat, you start producing your own brass, making semi-custom ammunition, and kind of building the confidence, like, oh, we're here to stay. This is a big round that's going to be the future, and have its own, place in this industry.
Single source ammo is always tough, right? But we've created, 4 different loads for these that are capable of kind of targeting different games. We shoot a 145 ELDX out of there, covering whitetail and deer size species in that. We got that 165 Accubon long range. Great bullet, bonded bullet. Lots of internal damage without a high fragmenting bullet, kind of staying on path and penetrating. Yeah. And you might get some exits here and there, but the internal damage is crazy. And then we hop over to the 170 grain Burger, which is like the highest BC in class or per caliber.
It's EOL, isn't it?
Yeah, the EOL, and it was EOL. Now it's the Elite Hunter. But just incredibly high BC. Just the most efficient bullet in it. Goes well in here. And like we said, just those BCs they just outrun things that may start at a little higher velocity than the others. So BC's incredibly important. And then we got our big dog, the Hammer. It's the 175 Sierra Game Changer. Kind of an old bullet. It kind of launched with the 6.8 Western. They kind of got that bullet made for them. But that's our Hammer. We got some guys down south that shoot them at Nilgai, and can't get enough of them.
Yeah. So just because you did touch on the 6.8 Western, right? We got to talk about the pros and the cons, the risks, rewards. When cartridges aren't successful by big manufacturers, what have you noticed in your expertise and what you see on a daily basis on what the consumer likes, what they don't like, and kind of why things work and don't work?
Oh man, guys are terrified sometimes of buying cartridges that they think aren't going to stick, and I guess 6A Western ran into a tough one because that was like kind of the COVID times, so they got whacked by that. But not to critique a big manufacturer, but like that, but it did come up a little short in the grand scheme of things. And I think it was like ammo availability, and they didn't really market it towards anything that was like game changing. They still marketed them in 24-inch barrels, which I feel like if you're compared to a 24-inch barrel, like you're in the 28 nozzler conversation, so if you're shooting a short action cartridge in a 24-inch barrel, we're not really playing the short.
Not doing that instead?
Exactly. Right. So yeah, I think they kind of clipped their wings there by doing that, but they're trying to place that velocity game. That's what everybody was into. They didn't stick their neck out there and say, hey, this is meant to be short. This is meant, because you can't do a 28 nozzle in a short barrel. You can't do it, So we're taking all these like great bullets at 28 nozzle shoots, but then we're finding a way, an effective way to squeeze them into a short action cartridge, and still, we create a different package and a different ammo, and that's where our niche is. And then having the ammo to back it up,
right?
In an affordable price range, and also that just delivers on an accuracy side. That's such a huge part of custom rifles is pumping out accurate ammo consistently.
Right. And I think that's a big part of our business model. We're not trying to kill it on ammo. We want you to feel very confident the ammo is going to be readily available, or whatever, $60 to $75 a box, depending on which bullet you get. It's intentional.
Yeah.
It's for you to have to consume, and just kind of make this market for us in a way. We've had plenty of them field tested. What was the first time? I think first animal we took with one was you.
Yeah. We went to King Ranch.
Yeah, King Ranch on the Neil guy.
Yeah, we went down there. We're like, let's put this thing to the test. What's the biggest thing we can shoot within 6 hours?
We talk about the hide thickness, and no one can knock one of these down.
You need a 300 Win Mag minimum. You need a 30 caliber.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we went out there and we killed one of those big bulls on the King Ranch, and we kind of looked at each other and said, like, wow,
we can do it.
Okay. That's a big box to be checked. Like I would say a Neil guy is extremely more tough than a elk,
right.
Right.
Oh yeah. Just the thickness, the muscle makeup, almost like an Aoudad too. Aoudad can wear them as good as anybody. Yeah. We've had plenty of those in West Texas, have a lot of success with the 27.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. With all the different types of bullets, maybe not the 145s, but the 165s and up, like those guys have been shooting those out in West Texas for a while and been successful. They rant and rave about the ability of them in a short package. So it's pretty fulfilling whenever those guys like report back and have a lot of success when you're like, yeah, we didn't miss on this one. This is good.
And I think that was our whole goal, was to leave no stone unturned, right? We wanted to, any combative, any pro, any con, we wanted to explore it too. This bullet better get this done. This better be enough velo.
Yeah.
This better perform in these settings, or what are we really trying to hang our hat on?
Yeah. I think it says a lot. Like the first cartridge that we jump to whenever we go on our hunts, like we grab our Tombstones, right? We may be a little biased to it, but at the end of the day, if they didn't work, we wouldn't take them. We're spending a lot of money on these hunts, and the last thing I want to do is put myself in a least successful scenario, So I think just kind of betting on yourself, and really taking your own cartridges out to do everything. I know you got the goal of the 29 and doing all that. Like you have every intention of doing it all with the Tombstone, which I think is so cool.
Yeah, no doubt. The when we're touching on barrel links, when we're touching on what could be other caliber options, why pick ours or the Tombstone over another? We always circle back 65 PRC. 65 PRC is well done, right? We applaud Hornady for everything they've done from the 65 Creedmoor up to the 65 PRC, because what they do to be successful, they made their ammo readily available everywhere.
Great price
at a great price point, right? So entry level person buying a Remington 700, Savage 110, all the way to all the custom stuff. You can hand load it. You can do whatever. It was all available. That was smart. So we took that model and said, let's be a much smaller, very efficient version of Hornady with this round.
Yeah.
And, it's been cool to see, okay, they're shooting 143s or the 147 tops. They're, but how can we kind of get a little bit more out of this cartridge? And I think we kind of nailed that with the bullet options we have. And I think people are especially our clients that have been, bought these really before we had head state brass. I think it's funny that we're sending like 100 rounds to the guy. You're like, hey man, you can put the 300
yeah,
WSM.
I'm coloring the head stamp, like not 300 WSM, don't put that in there.
Exactly. So we've come a long ways. Yeah. And you did touch on a little bit with the high roller stuff and the Tombstone. Let's talk about all three models.
Yeah.
And kind of give people a breakdown in the most, what differentiates them.
Yeah. The biggest thing is the actions. We started with the Desperado, and it had the integral rail on top of the action. I think what that solves, especially in like higher recoiling cartridges like long actions, that's never going to come loose. So it's just like one more variable we don't have to worry about. That'd be a horror story if you go out somewhere, no tools, and my scope rail's loose. Like that's tough. That's hard to combat, especially in a field scenario. So the Desperado solves that issue. We also found a great balance with the barrels that we put on them, doing the carbon fiber stuff, kind of squeezing in some 19s and 21s and things like that. But Desperados are typically built, for the long action crowd. We offer them in short actions for guys that aren't necessarily super hyper focused on weight. They're great options, but I would say our most popular, especially this year, was the 7PRC, building them in Desperados. We did like some 19s and 22s and things like that, and they turned out great. Great balance.
Suppressed.
Yeah, while being suppressed.
Yeah.
So, and then I guess, like I said, I kind of briefly touched on how the Tombstone and the high roller came together. But the high rollers are our lightest weight option. They're 6 to 6.5 pounds and kind of short configurations with the lighter stocks and stuff like that. So really make an effective sheep gun. You're going to take it on a hike. It's not going to be so cumbersome as you dive into getting a little more out there and a little further away from the truck. It's kind of nice to have a little lighter pack on you.
But then talk about some of the additional stock options we've kind of embraced with the ARC rail system. And then also the bipod stuff, and why we've kind of jumped out the flush cups, like just kind of jumped through all the hoops on why you did what you did with a lot of our stuff.
Yeah. Like, I guess I'll cover the rails first. There's not a lot of people that don't want the ability to put a bipod on it. You don't always get to shoot prone, but when you can, it's probably the best setup you can get. All those different points of contact, and just can't be any more stable than that. So there's not a lot of guns we don't build without pick rails on them. But even the new McMillan stock, the Mountain Tracker, those have been super popular this year because they have that integrated ARCA rail in the middle. Those are great. That's a great place to attach a rifle to a tripod. That's the center point of the rifle. They got a lot of great balance there. They basically, latch it in there and walk off, and it'll be right there when you get back. So just a rock solid setup. I know, we went to Oklahoma, and you shot that elk off of that, seated and
heck, I wouldn't even hurt the hole in the rifle.
Yeah,
just kind of being balanced on top of that. So no, that was my first kind of time using an arc rail. Most of the time we are off a bipod, or the attachment was out front, or shooting sticks, etc. So
or like even those hog saddles.
Like the hog saddle was more of our kind of a couple of years ago. We had a bunch of.
Well, it was just like super universal. But then like someone comes up with a great idea of like this like streamline ARCA rail that's mounted in the middle that. I don't know. It's like, why wasn't it there the whole time? So guys that are like trying to hunt tripod and things like that, it fit that niche perfectly, you know? So, and then, the different stock options, you got the McMillan, and then, on the AG stuff, we got the Alpine Hunter, the Chalk Branch, and the Sportsman. Those are all mostly, personal preference, grip angles, fore ends a little thinner, a little wider, a little more square, that kind of stuff.
Save a little weight here and there, like my chalk branch that I had for many years.
Yeah.
Super lightweight, super handy, but rigid enough to not like be flexed or anything like that. So I loved how the handle ran out on that one, and the flush cups, etc. Easy to carry.
Yeah, flush cups are nice, especially if you're really going to put it on your back for a while, getting that, especially on the more vertical grip angles on the stocks now. Sliding that on the side and getting to put that flush against your back for that thing to dig into you all the time. I mean, all that little stuff. Well, the further you get away from the truck, the more it matters.
100%.
Yeah.
It was like that mountain line I went up, climbed 11 miles on top of some of the most rugged stuff in West Texas I've ever been up on, cramping up the whole deal. But carrying that rifle with my flush cups on the wrong side of my rifle.
Yeah.
And that just kind of the bolt digging into my back.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, the guide at the end's like, hey, the dogs are over here. We got to catch up. I'm like, man, here's the gun. I'm done.
You shoot him all like I did it.
You know what I mean? But it made me revisit how heavy a rifle do I really need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At the time, I think I was a 22, 23-inch barrel.
Yeah.
I wanted to maximize this. I had a can on it. Had some extra bells and whistles. I was like, dude, get this thing lighter than it is. But it's just kind of...
You don't know until you know, though, right? Like, until you get out there and like, whoa.
I was a different man 11 miles later on top of that. I was a different person. In a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way. I got full exposure. Like, granted, that's not Alaska, that's not British Columbia, all that's coming, but it was a good get your feet wet, find out what you really matter to you.
Okay, let's lighten this deal up.
Yeah, no doubt. So I think it's relatable to people because I think we all start there. We want as much capability. I was one and the same, man, I want to be able to shoot 1,000 yards. I want to be ready to roll. And I'm like, this mountain line, you better be a lot closer than that, dude. I'm gonna throw rocks at him here for too long.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly where the high roller like excels, and just all that. They just anytime you get further away from the truck, like that's the rifle I'm gonna grab, And then lastly, the Ranch King. Ranch King is near and dear to my heart. If we would have had this as kids, we wouldn't have had to get beaten up by that 25-06. But just man, kids benefit so much from having a gun that fits them well. And we got buddies back home that built these things like as varmint guns, and then their kids end up taking them from them. And it's cool to get a 7-year-old on a rifle that's really comfortable. And like everyone's so worried like, oh man, I want to take my kid hunting. I just don't know if he's got the capabilities. The last thing you want is a kid to be unsuccessful and not enjoy it. And getting in a Ranch King where it's adjustable to them, but then after they're done hunting, I can take it and go do what I want because it fits us both extremely well. Yeah,
and also you can be in the same deer blind. You could be hunting a specific buck. You could be out your deer lease. Kids you know what? There's an opportunity. There's a hog. There's a javelina. There's a cool opportunity. It's downtime, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's always an opportunity. And I think that's what versatility of like the Ranch King in general. It's supposed to be like the ranch truck. It's supposed to be right in the front seat with you, ready to rock. And I just think that's what we decided to make it short barrels, suppressed, low recoil. Fully capable. I mean, these things are still 300, 500
Yeah, I mean,
yards.
we still build them in short action cartridges, like up to 6.5 PRC. So, like, even if, like, say you don't have kids, but you got a wife that's kind of getting into it, and you can both share the same gun. Yeah. So that's kind of like on the high end of it all. That and the 27 Tombstone. But the most popular, I would say, in the Ranch King with that Manners adjustable length of pull stock is the 6 Creedmoor. We've had growing up in South Texas, and our dad shooting a bunch of deer is like the management side of that place that he's working on or whatever. But the 6 Creedmoors does great job on whitetail, especially in these like realistic ranges of like inside 300 yards. Like, man, the internal damage that these like 103 LDXs do to deer are fantastic. And then, such low recoil and that stock is a little bit heavier than the rest of the rifles, which, can be kind of portrayed as a negative, but in our opinion, the positive is extra weight reduces recoil. Right. So it's an extremely comfortable gun.
Counter, one variable affects another, that kind of deal. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's super cool that we've gotten here. It's been a lot of trial and error, right? Of finding where each model fits in its own element. But like, we say this every time when someone comes in and says, this is my application, this type of hunt I'm going on. Yeah. We're kind of leaning like, okay, it looks like you're headed this way. But just kind of walk through like your typical transaction of somebody walking in the shop or on the phone or on email, like kind of the questions that kind of come up. Yeah. It's always like, I don't know, you'll get the guys that like this, like one rifle that does it all. And we really try and tell them that that's not a realistic expectation. Is there a rifle that can cover a lot of different things? Yes, but there's not a one rifle that's like perfect for everything. I don't truly believe that exists. It's either overkill for something or underkill for the other. So especially once you start adding multiple people pulling the trigger on it, it just becomes more of a deal. So whenever guys come in, it's just constantly just trying to identify the goals of what they're after, and just whenever these guys start talking and they're talking about their application, where they're headed, what they're going to primarily use it for, my brain starts going, okay, I'm thinking high roller, I'm thinking 17-inch barrel, I'm thinking suppressed, I'm thinking all these things. What's the lightest weight? Or this guy's like, oh, I'm going out to Colorado, I'm on an elk hunt, the guide said be ready for 600 plus, and it's like completely different mindset. So there's not one answer to any specific decision. It's just really honing in on what's the primary use of this rifle and kind of identifying those components and nailing it. I agree. Well, that kind of wraps up today's episode. I think we can always talk 27 Tombstone, talk models, but I think our ultimate goal is just constantly educate and inform people that things exist for a reason. The 27 Tombstone exists for a reason.
Yeah.
It has its place, and it checks a whole lot of boxes.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people may be worried a little bit about the velocities of the 27 Tombstone, in some of those shorter barrels, but 2,700 feet per second in a 17, 18-inch barrel with these super efficient bullets is going to get you out to 700, 800, 900 yards with 1,000 foot-pounds of energy. And that's somewhat of the industry standard of what you need to take big game. So, I think there's a bunch of different ways to skin the same cat, I think we have a unique way of doing it in the most compact and usable rifle and effective overall on its job.
I agree wholeheartedly. But anyways, thank you all for tuning in. This is Exile's podcast. My brother here is pretty knowledgeable when it comes to ballistics and our rifle models, but tune in next time. Thanks.